"Step aside, Mum," I said. "Step aside. We are boarding first class only." The words didn't just hang in the air. They landed like a slap. A hush swept over gate B14 at JFK International. Every eye shifted to the woman in the impeccable cream pantsuit, her hand extended with a boarding pass that the gate agent refused to touch. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a system error. It was a power trip. The agent smirked, convinced she had caught a fraudster trying to sneak into luxury. She had no idea that the woman she was humiliating didn't just buy the ticket, she owned the patent for the very turbine engines spooling up outside. The name on the ticket wasn't just a passenger's. It was the name written on the plane's registration. The air inside JFK's Terminal 4 smelled of stale coffee, floor wax, and the specific, high-frequency anxiety of 300 people trying to get to London. "Doctor." Veronica Roche adjusted the strap of her leather tote bag. It was a calm gesture, one she used to center herself. Being a black woman in the upper echelons of aerospace engineering meant she had perfected the art of unbothered. She had negotiated contracts worth billions, stared down Senate subcommittees, and redesigned propulsion systems that were currently revolutionizing transatlantic flight. But to the woman standing behind the podium at gate B14, Veronica was apparently invisible. Or rather, she was all too visible, but seen through a lens of suspicion so thick it was practically opaque. Veronica checked her watch, a vintage piece, a gift from her late father. 6:45 p.m. Boarding for flight 882 to Heathrow was scheduled to begin in 5 minutes. She was tired. It had been a 3-day whirlwind in D.C., and all she wanted was the lie-flat seat in 1A, a glass of champagne, and the silence of noise-cancelling headphones. She approached the priority lane. The carpet here was plush, distinct from the blue industrial weave of the main terminal. A red velvet rope separated the pre-boarding/first class lane from the growing mass of economy passengers. Standing guard at the podium was a woman whose name tag read Brianna. Brianna had the kind of haircut that suggested she demanded to speak to managers on her days off, and a posture that said she was the warden of this particular patch of linoleum. She was currently typing furiously on her terminal, ignoring the line of 3 people forming in the priority lane. Veronica stood behind a tall man in a grey suit. "Mister." "I'm important," judging by the way he was loudly closing a business deal on his phone. "Yeah, tell the Tokyo team I'm out. If they want the merger, they come to me," the man barked, laughing. Brianna looked up. Her expression softened into a sugary, service industry smile. "Good evening, sir." Scanning. "There we go. Enjoy your flight, Mr. Kensington." "Thanks, doll," he said. Breezing past, Veronica stepped up. The smile on Brianna's face didn't just fade, it vanished, replaced by a look of sheer, unadulterated annoyance. She didn't look at Veronica's face. She looked at Veronica's chest, then her bag, then the line behind her. "Zone 1 only right now," Brianna said, her voice flat. She turned her attention back to her computer screen, her fingers clacking loudly on the keys. Veronica held out her phone, the QR code for her boarding pass glowing on the screen. "I'm Zone 1, Seat 1A," Brianna sighed. It was a loud, theatrical sigh, the kind you use when a child asks for a cookie before dinner. She looked up, her eyes narrowing. "Mum, I don't have time for games. The economy line is over there." She pointed a manicured finger toward the chaotic mass of people near the windows. "Group 4 and 5 won't be called for another 20 minutes. Please clear the lane for first-class passengers." Veronica didn't move. She felt that familiar heat rising in her chest, the adrenaline spike she had felt 1,000 times in boardrooms when someone asked her to fetch coffee instead of the schematics. "I am a first-class passenger," Veronica said, her voice steady, low, and perfectly enunciated. "My name is Dr. Veronica Roche. I am in seat 1A. Scan the pass." Brianna let out a short, incredulous laugh. She leaned over the podium, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial, patronizing whisper. "Look, honey, I've seen it all. The Photoshop apps, the screenshots sent by friends. It's not going to work. You're blocking the lane for the actual paying customers. Do you want me to call security, or are you going to go wait your turn like everyone else?" Behind Veronica. A young couple shifting restlessly in their designer tracksuits began to murmur. The pressure was building. "I am not moving," Veronica said, her grip tightening on her phone. "And I would suggest you check the manifest before you embarrass yourself further." "Embarrass myself?" Brianna's face flushed a blotchy red. She stood up straighter, smoothing her Ascendia Airways scarf. "I have worked this gate for 15 years. I know what a first-class passenger looks like, and I know when someone is trying to pull a fast one. Now step aside." Veronica didn't blink. She didn't shout. She simply placed her phone directly over the scanner on the podium. Beep! The machine flashed green. For a second, silence reigned. The green light pulsed, mocking Brianna's certainty. But Brianna wasn't done. She wasn't the type to accept defeat. Certainly not from someone like Veronica. She stared at the screen, then at the machine, then back at Veronica. "System error," Brianna announced loudly, cancelling the scan. "Excuse me?" Veronica asked, her eyebrows rising. "The machine is glitching. It happens when people try to use duplicate passes." Brianna's fingers flew across her keyboard. "I'm voiding this attempt. You need to step out of line while I verify this manually. It's probably a stolen credit card flag." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Stolen. "You are making a mistake," Veronica said, the temperature of her voice dropping to absolute 0. "A very expensive mistake. The only mistake," Brianna snapped, pointing to the side, "was thinking you could hustle my gate. Move. Now." The hum of the terminal seemed to drop away, replaced by the ringing silence of a public spectacle. People love a scene, especially at an airport. Travelers looked up from their novels and iPads. Phone cameras were raised, the unblinking eyes of the internet ready to record. Veronica stepped to the side, not because she was yielding, but because she needed space to operate. She wasn't going to have a shouting match. That was what Brianna wanted, an angry black woman she could villainize. Veronica refused to give her the footage. "I'm waiting," Veronica said, folding her arms. "Verify it." Brianna ignored her, waving the next couple forward. "So sorry about the delay, folks. Just some ticketing irregularities. You know how it is." She cast a sneering glance at Veronica. "Some people think the rules don't apply to them." The couple, the ones in the tracksuits, shuffled past Veronica, eyes averted, embarrassed to be part of the moment. Veronica watched them go. She watched the green light flash for them. She watched them disappear down the jet bridge. She took a deep breath, mentally counting to 3. 1, 2, 3. She pulled out her second phone, her work phone. It was a satellite-encrypted device, usually reserved for communicating with field teams or government liaisons. She scrolled through her contacts until she found the number she needed. Jeffrey Hines, Chief Pilot, Ascendia Airways. She didn't call him immediately. She wanted to give Brianna one last chance to do the right thing. "Brianna," Veronica said. She read the name tag again, leaning in slightly. Brianna Miller. I'm going to ask you one more time to check the manifest. Look at the passenger list. Look at the notes attached to seat 1A. Brianna didn't even look up. She was processing a family of 4 now. I told you, I'm waiting for security. I flagged your ticket as fraudulent. If it's real, you can explain to the police how you afforded a $12,000 ticket. I didn't buy the ticket, Brianna. I knew it, Brianna crowed, finally looking at Veronica with a triumphant grin. Admitting it already. Employee pass, buddy pass. Those are subject to standby. You don't bump paying customers. I didn't buy it, Veronica repeated, her voice cutting through Brianna's noise. Because my company owns the lease on this aircraft. Brianna paused. For a split second, confusion flickered in her eyes. But her bias was a strong shield. It deflected the logic instantly. Right. And I'm the Queen of England. Security is on the way. Ma'am. At that moment, 2 uniformed officers approached the gate. They weren't TSA. They were Port Authority police. One was older, tired-looking. The other was young, hand resting near his belt, scanning the crowd for a threat. Problem here, Brianna, the older officer asked. Yes. Officer, Brianna said, her voice turning into a whine of victimhood. This passenger is refusing to leave the priority area. She's attempting to board with a flagged ticket. And when I confronted her about the fraud, she became belligerent. Belligerent. The word was a weapon. Veronica hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't cursed. She hadn't moved aggressively. The young officer stepped toward Veronica. Ma'am, I need to see your ID and boarding pass. Veronica held them out slowly. Officer, my name is Doctor. Veronica Roche. This agent has refused to scan my valid ticket and has accused me of fraud without evidence. I would like you to supervise while she actually checks the flight manifest. The officer looked at the ID, then the boarding pass on the phone. Doctor, Roche, first class. He looked at Brianna. It scans on my handheld. Brianna. It's a clone, Brianna insisted, stepping out from behind the podium. She was committed now. She had called the cops. She had to be right. The system flagged it. She probably stole the credit card info. Look at her, does she look like she's flying international first class? The terminal went silent. The racism wasn't coded anymore. It was out in the open, naked and ugly under the fluorescent lights. Veronica looked at the officer. Did you hear that? The older officer shifted uncomfortably. Brianna, maybe just check the computer again. I am not checking it again, Brianna snapped. I am the gate lead. It is my discretion. She is a security risk now. I want her off the flight. Denied boarding. She crossed her arms, a smug smile returning to her face. She had played the trump card. A gate agent could deny boarding for almost any reason, and security risk was the magic phrase that shut down all debate. You're denying me boarding, Veronica asked softly. You bet I am. You can take it up with customer service in the morning. Now, get your bag and get out of my gate area. Veronica nodded slowly. Okay. She tapped the screen of her encrypted phone. She didn't call customer service. She didn't call a lawyer. She hit the speed dial for the cockpit. Because what Brianna didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know in her narrow, hateful little world, was that the Boeing 787-10 sitting at the gate, tail number N-882-VIR, was the first of the Stratos line. It featured a revolutionary composite wing design patented by Roche Dynamics. and the VR in the tail number, it stood for Veronica Roche. "Captain Hines," Veronica said into the phone, her eyes locked on Brianna's face. "It's Veronica. I'm at the gate. I'm being denied boarding by your lead agent." Brianna's eyes went wide. She laughed nervously. "Who is she talking to? She's faking a call now." "Yes," Veronica continued. "She says I'm a security risk. She says I couldn't possibly afford the seat." A pause. Veronica listened to the voice on the other end. "I see," Veronica said. "Yes, the door is still open. Okay, I'll wait right here." She hung up and lowered the phone. "You're pathetic," Brianna spat. "Pretending to call the captain. You know the cockpit is a secure zone. They don't take calls from random passengers. I'm not a random passenger." "Brianna," Veronica said, her voice ringing with the finality of a judge's gavel. "And you are about to have a very, very bad day." The jet bridge door, the one behind the podium that led down to the plane, clicked and hissed open. The crowd gasped. Stepping out wasn't a flight attendant. It was a man in a pristine uniform with 4 gold stripes on his shoulders. Captain Jeffrey Hines. He was a tall man with silver hair and a face that commanded instant respect. He looked furious. He didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at the police. He looked straight at Brianna. "Brianna," the captain barked, "why is the owner of this aircraft standing on the wrong side of the velvet rope?" The color drained from Brianna's face so fast it looked like she might faint. The owner," she whispered. "Doctor, Roche designed the bird you're standing in front of," Captain Hines said, stepping over the rope to stand next to Veronica. He offered his hand to her. "Dr. Roche, my humblest apologies. We were wondering why the VIP manifest hadn't cleared." Veronica took his hand. "Captain, it seems Brianna here believes I stole my ticket. She's also flagged me as a security risk." Captain Hines turned his gaze back to Brianna. It was a look of pure professional disintegration. "You did what?" I thought," Brianna stammered, her hands trembling as she clutched the podium. The system, she didn't look like what." Hines stepped closer. "Finish that sentence. Brianna, I want to hear it. The officers want to hear it." Brianna opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked around for support. But the crowd was against her now. People were jeering. The phones were all pointed at her. "I need to make a call," Brianna squeaked. "You certainly do," Veronica said, "but not to your manager. I've already texted the CEO of Ascendia. He's in London, waiting for my arrival to sign the contract for the new fleet. He's going to be very interested to know why his lead engineer was accused of being a thief by his ground staff." The twist of the knife was precise. The karma wasn't just coming. It had arrived. First class. The silence that had fallen over the gate area shattered. It started with a low murmur, a ripple of shock that quickly transformed into a wave of murmurs, laughter, and vindication. The smartphones that had been recording silently now seemed to buzz with energy. The court of public opinion had reached a verdict in record time. Brianna stood frozen, her hand still hovering near the phone she had claimed she needed to use. Her face was a mask of panic, the foundation cracking under the weight of her sudden reality check. I was just following protocol," Brianna stammered, her voice thin and reedy. She looked at Captain Hines, desperation clawing at her throat. "Captain, you know how it is. We have strict guidelines about profiling possible fraud. She refused to cooperate. I refused to be harassed, Veronica corrected, her voice cutting through Brianna's excuses like a laser through steel. She turned to the police officers. Officer, am I still a security risk, or am I free to board the aircraft that my company's engines are powering? The older officer, who had looked tired before, now looked positively terrified. He knew a lawsuit when he saw one. He stepped back, holding his hands up in a gesture of total surrender. Ma'am, it appears there's been a significant misunderstanding. You are free to go. We're done here. He shot a glare at Brianna, a look that said, "You nearly cost me my pension," and nudged his younger partner to walk away. "Wait!" Brianna cried, realizing her backup was leaving. "You can't just leave. She's disruptive. The only thing disrupting this flight, Brianna, is you." Captain Hines said. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. The quiet authority of a man responsible for 300 lives was far scarier. He keyed the radio on his shoulder. "Operations. This is Captain Hines at B-14. I need a station manager to the gate immediately. We have a personnel issue." "Copy that. Captain, Manager O'Neill is on his way." Brianna flinched at the name. O'Neill was the station chief. He didn't come down to gates unless someone was being fired or arrested. Veronica adjusted her bag. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply looked at Brianna with a profound, pitying disappointment. "You had 3 chances. Brianna, I gave you 3 chances to look at the screen, to do your job, to see a human being standing in front of you. But you were so in love with your little ounce of power that you couldn't see the mountain standing in your way." She stepped forward, crossing the invisible barrier Brianna had tried so hard to maintain. She walked right up to the podium. Brianna shrank back, terrified Veronica might strike her. But Veronica just reached over, picked up her boarding pass from where Brianna had discarded it, and held it under the scanner herself. Beep. Green light. "Boarding," Veronica said to the machine. She turned to the crowd, to the 100 faces watching her. She saw the young couple in the track suits, the businessmen, the tired families. "For everyone in economy," Veronica said, raising her voice slightly so the back rows could hear. "Drinks are on me tonight. Tell the flight attendants to put it on the Roche Dynamics tab." A cheer went up, loud and raucous. It was the release of tension everyone needed. Veronica walked down the jet bridge, the sound of applause fading behind her. Captain Hines walked beside her, shaking his head. "I am so sorry." "Doctor." "Roche," he said, his voice low. "I had no idea it was you. If I had known—" "It shouldn't matter who I am. Jeffrey," Veronica said, her face tight. "That's the point. If I were a school teacher or a nurse, she would have left me standing there until the plane took off. She didn't target me because I'm rich. She targeted me because of what I look like. The money is just the hammer I'm going to use to fix it." They reached the door of the aircraft. The warm, golden lighting of the Dreamliner's cabin welcomed them. The lead flight attendant, a woman named Chloe, who had flown with Veronica before, gasped. "Doctor, Roche." We saw the gate commotion on the monitors. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine, Chloe," Veronica said, stepping into the galley. "But we might be delayed a few minutes. Your gate agent is about to be relieved of command." As Veronica settled into Seat 1A, a spacious private suite with soft leather and a glass of pre-poured champagne, she looked out the window. She could see the terminal glass. She could see the flashing lights of a cart pulling up. A man in a suit, Manager O'Neill, was storming toward the podium, Brianna was arguing. She was pointing at the plane. She was crying. Veronica took a sip of champagne. It was crisp, cold, and tasted like victory. But the war wasn't over. She pulled out her phone. The video of the incident was already on Twitter. It had 40,000 views in 10 minutes. The hashtag #FlyingWhileBlack was trending, along with Gate B14. She opened her email and began to type. She wasn't just sending a complaint. She was initiating a corporate restructuring. The doors closed 20 minutes late. Brianna was not on the jet bridge to wave them off. As the massive Rolls-Royce Trent 1000 engines Veronica had helped optimize, roared to life, pushing the aircraft into the dark sky over Jamaica Bay. Veronica reclined her seat. The cabin was quiet, the rush of the air conditioning the only sound. But on the ground, the noise was just beginning. Veronica connected to the plane's high-speed Wi-Fi. Her phone was blowing up. Notifications were rolling in like a ticker tape. Missed call Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Ascendia Airways. Missed call Public Relations Department, Roche Dynamics. Missed call CNN Booking. She ignored the news. She ignored PR. She called Jonathan Pierce. He answered on the first ring. Veronica. Jonathan's voice was breathless. He sounded like he was running. I just saw the video. I don't even have words. I am mortified. Hello, Jonathan, Veronica said calmly, watching the lights of Long Island fade below. I assume you're calling to apologize. Apologize, I'm calling to beg for mercy, Jonathan said. Veronica, you know Ascendia values our partnership. We are launching the new fleet next month. This incident, it's a disaster. I've already suspended the agent pending investigation. Suspended? Veronica laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Jonathan, let me be clear. I am currently flying on a plane that exists because my team solved the thermal efficiency problem in the turbine blades. I hold the lease. Technically, right now, I can order this pilot to turn around and land in Philadelphia if I feel the service standards are lacking. Veronica, please, Jonathan pleaded. What do you want? Name it. We'll fire her. We'll issue a public statement. We'll donate to a charity of your choice. That's the standard playbook, Jonathan. It's boring, and it doesn't solve the problem. Veronica swirled her glass. Brianna didn't act alone. She felt comfortable acting that way. She had a colleague standing right there who said nothing until the police arrived. She had a system that let her flag me as a security risk based on nothing but her own bias. This is systemic. I agree, Jonathan said quickly. We'll do training, sensitivity workshops. No, Veronica interrupted. You're going to do more than that. I want a complete audit of your gate protocols. I want the security discretion clause for gate agents revised, so it requires a second supervisor's sign-off before a passenger can be denied boarding, and I want it done by the time I land in London. There was silence on the line. That was a massive policy change. It would cost millions in retraining and slow down boarding times globally. Veronica, that's a board-level decision. I can't just... Then call the board, Veronica said. Call Reginald Hayes. Call Victoria Moore. Tell them that if this policy isn't drafted by the time I clear customs at Heathrow, Roche Dynamics is pulling the discount on the engine maintenance contract for the entire fleet. Do the math. Jonathan, that's a $40 million loss per year. Or you can rewrite a policy manual. She could hear Jonathan swallowing hard on the other end. I'll make the calls, he whispered. Good. Oh, and Jonathan. Yes. Brianna mentioned she's worked there for 15 years. I want her pension reviewed. If she violated the non-discrimination clause in her union contract, which she did, on camera, she shouldn't just be fired. She should lose the golden parachute she thinks she has. That's harsh. Veronica. So is being threatened with arrest for trying to go to work, Veronica replied. I'll see you in London. She hung up. The flight attendant, Chloe, appeared silently at her elbow with a warm towel. More champagne. Doctor. Roche. No, thank you. Chloe, I have some work to do. Veronica opened her laptop. She pulled up the live feed of the Ascendia Airways stock price. It had dropped 2% in the last hour. The market was reacting to the viral video. Investors were scared. She navigated to a folder on her secure drive labeled Project Horizon. It contained the passenger manifests and complaint logs she had legally requested as part of her company's quality assurance checks on the airline. She had never looked at them closely before. She usually just checked for mechanical delays. Now, she searched for Gate B14 and denied boarding. The results scrolled down the screen. January 12th, denied. Reason, aggressive behavior. February 4th, denied. Reason, suspicious documentation. March 20th, denied. Reason, non-compliance. There were dozens of them, all at Gate B14, all during Brianna's shift hours. And looking at the names, Jamal, Tanisha, Mateo, Nguyen, Okonjo. Veronica's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just a bad day for Brianna. This was a hobby. Brianna had been using her podium as a personal border control station for years, filtering out anyone who didn't fit her image of a worthy traveler. And she had gotten away with it because the victims were usually too scared, too poor, or too busy to fight back. Veronica felt a cold rage settle in her stomach. She picked up her satellite phone again. Get me legal, she said when her assistant answered. And get me the best civil rights litigator in New York. I don't just want Brianna fired. I want to find every single person she kicked off a flight in the last 5 years. And I want to file a class action lawsuit against Ascendia Airways for enabling it. The twist was just beginning. Brianna thought she was fighting a passenger. She didn't realize she had just started a war with a woman who had the resources to burn the whole battlefield down, while Veronica slept at 38,000 feet. The ground beneath Brianna Miller's feet was crumbling at a velocity she couldn't comprehend. In the fluorescent-lit purgatory of the Ascendia Airways administrative offices in Terminal 4, Brianna sat across from station manager Patrick O'Neill. The room was cold, the air recycling system humming a low, indifferent drone. O'Neill wasn't screaming. Screaming would have been better. Screaming implies passion, a loss of control. O'Neill was silent, reading a preliminary report on his tablet, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of the screen. Patrick, you have to understand, Brianna said, her voice trembling. She had been crying, her mascara smeared in jagged lines down her cheeks. She was aggressive. She came at me. The video is edited. It doesn't show what happened before. O'Neill didn't look up. There are 4 security cameras at Gate B, 1 for Brianna. We have every angle. She stood perfectly still. You, however, pointed your finger in her face 6 times. I was intimidated, Brianna insisted, clutching a tissue. You know how these people get when they think they're being disrespected. I was just trying to protect the flight. O'Neill finally looked up. His eyes were tired. These people. Brianna froze. She realized too late that she had let the mask slip again. The passengers, she corrected quickly. Too quickly. The entitled ones. The passenger, O'Neill said, sliding the tablet across the desk, is the single most important contract holder this airline has. Do you know what Roche Dynamics does? Brianna, they make engines. They own the patents on the fuel injection systems for our entire Boeing fleet. If Dr. Roche pulls her support, our maintenance costs triple overnight. We are talking about a 9-figure impact. And you treated her like she was trying to steal a seat she paid for. I didn't know, Brianna wailed. That is exactly the problem, O'Neill said, leaning back. You didn't know, and because you didn't know, you treated her like a criminal, which begs the question, how many other people have you treated like criminals because you didn't know who they were? The door opened. A woman in a sharp navy suit walked in. She didn't look like airline staff. She looked like a shark in human skin. This was Eleanor Vance. No, wait. Eleanor Vale. The name Vance is prohibited. This was Eleanor Vale from Ascendia's Internal Audit Division. Manager O'Neill, Eleanor said, placing a stack of files on the desk. We pulled the logs. Brianna looked at the files. They were thick. What is this? Brianna whispered. This, Eleanor said, sitting down next to O'Neill, is a record of every involuntary denied boarding you have processed in the last 7 years. It's fascinating reading. Ms. Miller, Eleanor opened the top file. Most gate agents have a denial rate of about 0.05%. Yours is 4%. That's 80 times the average. And when we cross-reference the denials with the passenger manifest, she tapped a page covered in highlighted names. Mr. Okonjo, denied. Reason, combative behavior. Note, passenger asked why Zone 1 was closed. Ms. Hernandez, denied. Reason, suspected fraudulent documents. Note, her visa was valid. Mr. Washington, denied. Reason, security risk. Note, he was an active duty Marine. Eleanor looked at Brianna with eyes like flint. There is a pattern here. Brianna, a statistically impossible pattern. You don't target random people. You target people of color. Specifically, people of color in first or business class. That's a lie, Brianna shouted, standing up. I am not a racist. I have black friends. This is a witch hunt. Sit down, O'Neill snapped. But here is the twist, Eleanor continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. We looked a little deeper. We looked at what happened to those seats after you denied the passengers. Brianna's face went from pale to grey. She stopped breathing. In 80% of these cases, Eleanor said, flipping a page, the seat was resold within 10 minutes to a standby passenger, usually a cash upgrade at the gate. The room went silent. Now, gate upgrades are standard, Eleanor said, but the revenue from those upgrades is supposed to go into the general pool. However, in your shift logs, these specific upgrades were often processed as manual overrides, meaning the system didn't automatically record the transaction path in the same way. Eleanor leaned in. We checked your bank records. Brianna, we have the subpoena. We found a secondary account, monthly deposits that match, almost to the dollar. The commission bonuses for high-performance gate revenue. You were gaming the system, O'Neill said, his voice filled with disgust. You were kicking people off the plane, accusing them of being criminals, just so you could resell their seats and hit your monthly bonus targets. You weren't just being a bigot. Brianna, you were being a thief. Brianna sat back down, hard. The air had left the room. I have a union rep, she whispered. The union protects employees, Eleanor said, closing the file. It doesn't protect felons. We've already contacted the district attorney. This isn't just a firing. Brianna, this is grand larceny and fraud. London was grey and raining, a stark contrast to the firestorm burning on social media. Veronica Roche stepped off the plane at Heathrow. She didn't go to baggage claim. She was met on the jet bridge by a private escort service, 2 large men in suits who guided her down a back staircase to a waiting black Mercedes Maybach. Inside the car sat Harrison Ford. No, that's an actor. Inside the car sat Harrison Cole, the lead litigator for the firm Sullivan and Cromwell, one of the most prestigious law firms in the world. He was a man who cost $2,000 an hour, and he was worth every penny. "Dr. Roche," Harrison said, handing her a bottle of water. "Welcome to London. You've been busy." "I hate bullies." "Harrison," Veronica said, leaning back into the leather seat. "What's the status?" "It's explosive," Harrison said, opening his laptop. "The video has 12 million views. The hashtag is global. Ascendia's stock is down 6%. But the real news is what my team found in the last 4 hours." "Tell me." "We didn't just look at Brianna," Harrison said. "We used your access rights as a major shareholder to query the internal ethics hotline logs. It turns out 3 different junior agents filed complaints against Brianna Miller in 2023 and 2024. They reported that she was targeting minority passengers. Do you know what happened to those complaints?" Veronica looked out the window at the rain-streaked streets of London. "Let me guess. They vanished." "Worse," Harrison said. "They were marked, resolved, unfounded by the regional director of operations, a man named Ryder Sterling. Wait, no, his name is Ryder Stone. Catching the prohibited name Sterling. A man named Ryder Stone." "Stone," Veronica mused. "I know him. He's the one who signs the quarterly compliance checks." "Exactly. Stone and Brianna have a relationship. Not romantic, but financial. We found emails. Stone was pressuring gate agents to increase seat yield, basically. Revenue per flight. He encouraged agents to be aggressive with inventory management. Brianna was his star pupil. She was clearing high-value seats so they could be resold, boosting the region's numbers, which boosted Stone's bonus. Veronica turned to look at Harrison. Her eyes were cold. So, it was a racket. Institutionalized racism disguised as revenue optimization. "Precisely," Harrison said, "and that makes it a RICO case. Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. We can sue them for conspiracy." The car pulled up to the glass-fronted skyscraper of Ascendia's European headquarters in Canary Wharf. A mob of reporters was waiting outside, held back by police barriers. "Ready?" Harrison asked. Veronica adjusted her blazer. "I was born ready." They bypassed the lobby and took the private elevator to the 45th floor. The boardroom was vast, with a panoramic view of the Thames. Around the long mahogany table sat the board of directors of Ascendia Airways, 12 men and women in expensive suits, looking like they were attending a funeral. At the head of the table was Jonathan Pierce, the CEO. He looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "Dr. Roche," Jonathan said, standing up as she entered. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit." Veronica didn't sit. She stood at the end of the table, Harrison flanking her like a bodyguard. "I don't have time for pleasantries." "Jonathan," Veronica said, "I assume you've seen the news?" "We have," Jonathan said, wringing his hands. "And I want to assure you, Brianna Miller has been terminated effective immediately. We are issuing a full apology. "That's a good start," Veronica said. "But it's not enough." She signaled to Harrison, who placed a single thick document on the table. "What is this?" asked Victoria Moore, the chairwoman of the board. "That," Veronica said, "is a draft of a class action lawsuit representing 412 passengers who were wrongfully denied boarding by Ascendia Airways agents in the New York region over the last 5 years. All of them minorities, all of them humiliated." The room gasped. "Veronica," Jonathan said, his face paling. "A class action that would destroy our reputation. It would bankrupt the North American division. Then you should have thought about that before you promoted Ryder Stone." Veronica said. The name hit the room like a grenade. Jonathan looked at the chairwoman. "Stone." Jonathan asked, "What does Bob have to do with this?" "Stone covered it up," Veronica said, her voice rising with the righteous anger of every person who had ever been told to step aside by someone like Brianna. He suppressed internal complaints. He incentivized the behavior. He built a system where racism was profitable. Brianna was just the foot soldier. Stone was the general. Veronica leaned forward, placing her hands on the table. "Here is my offer," she said. "You have 1 hour. 1 hour to what?" Victoria Moore asked. 1 hour to fire Ryder Stone, publicly and with cause. 1 hour to agree to a settlement fund of $50 million for the victims of your discriminatory practices. And 1 hour to sign a binding agreement that allows an external civil rights oversight committee appointed by me to audit your hiring and firing practices for the next 10 years. $50 million, a board member choked. "That's extortion." "No," Veronica said, her eyes flashing. "Extortion is what your agents did to a grandmother from Queens last week when they made her buy a second ticket because they lost her reservation. 50 million is a discount, because if you don't sign..." I walk out that door. I hold a press conference with the BBC, and I announce that Roche Dynamics is cancelling the engine contract. And then, I sue you. The silence in the room was absolute. You could hear the rain hitting the glass. Jonathan Pierce looked at Victoria Moore. Moore looked at the document, then at Veronica. She saw the steel in Veronica's spine. She saw the truth. "Jonathan," Victoria said quietly. "Get legal on the phone. Draft the settlement." Jonathan slumped in his chair. "Yes, chairwoman." Veronica didn't smile. This wasn't a game. "One more thing," Veronica said. "I want Brianna Miller prosecuted. I want Ascendia to cooperate fully with the district attorney. I want her to serve time. We can't control the DA," Jonathan said, weakly. "You can hand over the evidence without a subpoena," Harrison interjected smoothly. "You can make it easy for them." Jonathan nodded. "Done." Veronica turned to leave. She paused at the door and looked back at the room full of powerful people who had just been brought to their knees by a black woman they had underestimated. "Next time," Veronica said, "check the name on the registration." The Queens County Criminal Court did not look like a place where victories were won. It looked like a place where hope went to be filed, processed, and eventually shredded. The air was thick with the smell of floor wax, stale coffee, and the unique, heavy scent of impending judgment. It was a stark contrast to the sterile, high-end luxury of the first-class cabin where Brianna Miller had once reigned supreme. 6 months had passed since the incident at Gate B14. 6 months since the video went viral. 6 months since Veronica Roche had systematically dismantled the corrupt infrastructure of Ascendia Airways' New York operations. Brianna Miller sat at the defendant's table, a ghost of her former self. The crisp Ascendia uniform, once her armor and her weapon, was gone. In its place, she wore a shapeless, charcoal-grey suit that looked as if it had been purchased from a discount rack specifically for this occasion. Her hair, usually sprayed into an immaculate, intimidating helmet, was pulled back into a severe, fraying bun. Her roots were showing a telltale sign of her financial ruin. She looked smaller, shrunken by the weight of the consequences she had never believed would arrive. She was utterly alone. The union representatives, who usually fought tooth and nail for their members, had abandoned her within 24 hours of the fraud charges being filed. Ascendia Airways, desperate to cauterize the public relations wound Veronica had inflicted, had cut her loose without a severance package or legal aid. Brianna was left with a court-appointed public defender, a harried man named Peter Sullivan, whose cheap tie and tired eyes suggested he knew this was a losing battle. "All rise," the bailiff's voice boomed, bouncing off the mahogany paneling. Judge Lydia Banks swept into the room. She was a woman of imposing stature, with steel-grey hair cut in a sharp bob and eyes that seemed to possess X-ray vision for lies. She didn't look at the files on her desk. She looked straight at Brianna. It was a look of clinical detachment, the look a surgeon gives a tumor before cutting it out. "Be seated," Judge Banks said. "We are here for sentencing in the matter of the People versus Brianna Miller. The defendant has been found guilty on counts of grand larceny in the 3rd degree, scheme to defraud in the 1st degree, and falsifying business records." Brianna flinched at each charge. Beside her, Peter Sullivan shuffled his papers, a nervous tick that betrayed his lack of confidence. The courtroom gallery was packed, but it wasn't filled with Brianna's supporters. There were no friends, no family, no colleagues holding signs of solidarity. Instead, the benches were filled with the people Brianna had spent 15 years terrorizing. The randoms, the security risks. There was Mr. Okonjo, the Nigerian textile merchant she had sneered at, now wearing an impeccably tailored suit. There was the young Marine she had accused of stealing valor, sitting ramrod straight in his dress blues. There was the grandmother from Queens, clutching her handbag, the woman Brianna had forced to buy a second ticket because she couldn't find the reservation. They sat in silent judgment, a living, breathing jury of her own making, and in the very back row, almost blending into the shadows, sat Dr. Veronica Roche. She wore a simple black trench coat and dark sunglasses. She hadn't come to gloat. She hadn't come to testify. She had come to witness the final variable in the equation she had written. The district attorney, Thomas Reed, stood up. He was a shark of a man, known for his theatrical style and his merciless pursuit of white-collar criminals who abused their power. He buttoned his jacket and walked slowly toward the jury box. Though there was no jury today, only the judge. "Your Honor," Reed began, his voice a deep baritone that commanded the room. "The defense has submitted a motion for leniency. They paint a picture of Ms. Miller as a victim of corporate pressure. They claim she was merely a cog in a machine designed by Ryder Stone. They say she was just following orders." Reed paused, letting the phrase hang in the air like a bad smell. He walked over to the prosecution table and picked up a heavy black binder. He dropped it on the table with a loud thud. "But the evidence tells a different story," Reed continued, his voice rising. "This binder contains the logs of over 400 incidents, 400 lives disrupted, 400 moments of humiliation. Ms. Miller didn't just follow orders, Your Honor. She innovated. She took the pressure from corporate and turned it into a personal sport. Reed turned to point a finger directly at Brianna. She shrank back, unable to meet his gaze. She targeted the vulnerable, Reed thundered. She used racial profiling not just as a tool for security, but as a tool for profit. She looked at passengers and decided, based on nothing but the color of their skin and the cut of their clothes, that they didn't belong in her world. She stole their seats, she stole their money, and worst of all, she stole their dignity. He turned back to the judge. She treated Gate B14 not as a service station, but as her own private kingdom where she was the judge, jury, and executioner. But today, Your Honor, that kingdom falls. Brianna's lawyer, Peter Sullivan, stood up. He looked defeated before he even spoke. Your Honor, please. My client is a 52-year-old woman with no prior criminal record. She has lost her career. She has lost her reputation. She has been vilified by the media. Sending her to prison would serve no rehabilitative purpose. We ask for probation and community service. Judge Banks leaned forward, interlacing her fingers. The silence in the room was so profound you could hear the hum of the ventilation system. Ms. Miller, the judge said. Stand up. Brianna's legs shook violently as she pushed herself up. She gripped the edge of the table, her knuckles white. I have read the victim impact statements, Judge Banks said, her voice deceptively soft. I read the statement from Mr. Okonjo, who missed his daughter's wedding because you decided his visa looked suspicious. I read the statement from Miss Davies, who missed her father's funeral because you gave her seat to a standby passenger for a cash kickback. I never meant to, Brianna stammered, tears streaming down her face. I was just doing my job. I'm sorry. I don't believe you. Judge Banks cut her off. The softness was gone, replaced by granite. You aren't sorry for what you did. You are sorry you picked a fight with Dr. Veronica Roach. You are sorry that for the first time in 15 years, you faced someone who could fight back. That is not remorse. Ms. Miller. That is regret. And the court does not grant leniency for regret. The judge picked up her gavel. It looked heavy in her hand. Brianna Miller, for the count of grand larceny in the 3rd degree, I sentence you to a term of 3 to 5 years in a state correctional facility. A gasp went through the room. Brianna let out a choked sob, her knees buckling. Sullivan had to grab her arm to keep her upright. Furthermore, Judge Banks continued, her voice relentless. You are ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $185,000, the estimated total of the fraudulent upgrades and stolen ticket values you processed over the last 5 years. I don't have that kind of money, Brianna wailed, panic setting in. I'm broke. You can't do this. I can, and I am, Judge Banks said. The court is aware of your accumulated pension fund from your 15 years at Ascendia. Under the Son of Sam laws and the statutes regarding proceeds of crime, the court hereby orders the seizure of your pension assets to satisfy the restitution order. This was the final blow. The safety net. The retirement she had protected so fiercely. The future she had thought was secure. It was gone. Vaporized. Bail is revoked. Remand the defendant immediately. The gavel slammed down. Bang. The sound was final, like a door slamming shut on a life. 2 court officers moved in with practiced efficiency. They didn't ask Brianna to step aside. They didn't check her zone number. They grabbed her wrists, pulled them roughly behind her back, and ratcheted the handcuffs tight. Click, click, click. Brianna looked around wildly, searching for anyone who might help her. Her eyes scanned the gallery and landed on the back row. They locked onto the dark sunglasses of Veronica Roche. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. Brianna stopped struggling. She stared at the woman she had tried to humiliate. The woman she had called a fraud. Veronica slowly lowered her sunglasses. Her eyes were not filled with hate. They were filled with a cool, detached clarity. She looked at Brianna, then gave a single, slow nod. It wasn't a nod of forgiveness. It was a nod of completion. The transaction was closed. The balance was paid. Veronica stood up, turned her back on the scene, and walked out of the courtroom. The sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor, clack. Clack. Clack was the only sound in the room as the officers dragged a weeping Brianna Miller through the side door toward the holding cells. Outside, the Queen's sky had cleared. The rain that had threatened all morning had broken, leaving the air crisp and clean. Veronica stood on the courthouse steps and took a deep breath. She pulled her phone from her pocket. There was a new email from Ascendia Airways. Subject implementation of Oversight Committee and Scholarship Fund Dr. Roche, per the settlement agreement. We have finalized the charter for the Civil Rights Oversight Committee. We are also pleased to confirm that the initial $50 million deposit for the Roche Ascendia Engineering Scholarship for Underrepresented Communities has been transferred. We look forward to rebuilding trust. Sincerely, Jonathan Pierce. CEO Veronica smiled a real, genuine smile. She didn't just win a lawsuit. She didn't just put a bigot in prison. She had built a ladder for the next generation to climb, ensuring that the next time a brilliant young black engineer walked up to a gate, they wouldn't have to fight to be seen. She raised her hand and hailed a yellow taxi. It pulled up to the curb, splashing a little puddle water. "Where to, lady?" the driver asked. Veronica slid into the back seat. "JFK International, Terminal 4, she said. "I have a plane to catch." "You got a ticket?" the driver asked. Glancing in the rear-view mirror, Veronica looked out the window at the city skyline. "Better," she said softly. "I own the wings." And that, my friends, is the story of how one gate agent's power trip became her prison sentence. Brianna thought she could hide behind a badge and a computer screen, treating people like numbers instead of human beings. But she forgot the most important lesson of all: you never know who you're talking to. She tried to crush a security risk and ended up crushed by the owner of the plane. This story is a powerful reminder that prejudice isn't just morally wrong, it's a liability. Brianna lost her job, her freedom, and her future because she couldn't see past her own bias. But the real victory wasn't just Brianna going to jail. It was the scholarship fund and the policy changes that will protect thousands of other passengers from going through the same thing. Justice isn't just about punishment, it's about change. I really hope you enjoyed this roller coaster of drama, legal justice, and sweet, sweet karma. If this story gave you chills, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel and tells me you want more stories like this. Make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when the next karma hits. I post new stories every week. What do you think about the judge seizing Brianna's pension? Was it too harsh, or was it the perfect payback for the money she stole? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and remember, be kind, because you never know who is holding the keys.